the Fate Master! Today's episode 28, is titled Somewhere Over the Rainbow, and chronicles the second of our three-part Oz-themed story arc. When we last left off in episode 27, Red to Oz, the children found themselves swept up in a Fearclease, a tornado-like dimensional portal to the Dreaming, the parallel realm that overlays the mortal realm and serves as the homeland of the fairies. This Fearclease swept the children into the land of Oz, depositing them into a timeline of events that seemed to parallel those of Frank L. Baum's 1909 children's novel, The Road to Oz. There, they met a traveling companion in the form of the Shaggy Man, helped the Rainbow's daughter, Polychrome, find her way back home, and ventured into the forest of the Fox Pookas, where they found the Fox King, King Reynard, caught in the claw foothold trap of their rivals, the Donkey Pookas of Donkerton. The children promised to free King Reynard by traveling to Donkerton to acquire the magic key that opened the trap. In this episode, the children continued further through the forest until they arrived at the high whitewashed city wall around Donkerton, where they called out to one of the sentinels atop the wall, a donkey at arms who identified himself as Ray, whom they asked for an audience with the king of Donkerton, King Kikabray. Ray permitted the children and the Shaggy Man into the city and brought them to the palace of King Kikabray, whom they beseeched to free King Reynard of Foxville from their foothold trap. Identifying herself as the Queen of Caslandia and using a combination of courtly etiquette and flattery, Cassie managed to convince King Kikabray to free King Reynard. But one strict condition was demanded: that the foxes stay out of the sylvan curtilages of Donkerton. Cassie explained she could make no promises on behalf of the Fox King, but agreed to lead King Kikabray and a donkey expedition party to the trapped Fox King for a parley. There, she helped broker a peace between the two feuding nations and a release of the Fox King from the foothold trap, in no small part due to the magical aid of Sabine, whose cleverness so impressed King Reynard that he awarded the tween-aged witch with the highest honor the kingdom of Foxville had to offer. He turned her human head into the head of a fox. Sabine protested in chagrin, but King Reynard IV could not understand her objection to this greatest of gifts. Ultimately, the forced transformation proved to be a minor annoyance, as Sabine soon thereafter used her own arcane magic to restore her head back to normal. Departing the forest, the Shaggy Man led the children to the workshop of his friend, Johnny Dewett, who, he explained, had built a sand boat that could help them cross the deadly desert, the last leg of their journey to the Emerald City. Inside the workshop, the children met the hearty but humble craftsman, Johnny Dewett, clad in a leather apron and a tool belt. At the Shaggy Man's request, Johnny Dewett agreed to lend them his sand boat, and they carried it to the edge of the deadly desert and set sail across the searing, shifting sands. Though the hull of the boat seemed to be unharmed, the children could see that anything that fell overboard and touched the searing sands turned to sand itself. The stakes were high. Capsizing would prove instantly fatal. But Johnny Dewett's boat saw them to the other end of the desert. Now, although this scene is from Baum's 1909 Road to Oz novel, intended as one of a series of sequels to his initial 1900 novel, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, which Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer made a film out of in 1939, The Wizard of Oz. This scene, set in the Deadly Desert, was featured in Return to Oz, a dark fantasy sequel film co-written and directed by Walter Murch. It stars Fairuza Balk in her first screen role, playing Dorothy Gale, before she became the goth girl teen heartthrob in the late 80s and early 90s. I wasn't a goth kid, so Fairuza Balk didn't appeal to me on that level, but I was a fan of Journey to Oz, and indeed, that whole subgenre of dark fantasy that was popular in 80s cinema, along with The Dark Crystal, Labyrinth, The Neverending Story, Legend, and so on. Future episodes of the Dresden Childlings feature additional homages to this 80s cinematic subgenre, so you'll see them again. Finally, the children arrived at the Emerald City, where the Shaggy Man showed the guardian of the gates of the imperial capital his invitation to Queen Ozma's birthday party. The guardian welcomed them in and led them to a salon where they were permitted to bathe, dress, and groom themselves for the party. This part I lifted right from the 1939 Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer film The Wizard of Oz with Judy Garland, where Dorothy and her traveling band are being treated to makeovers at the Emerald City before going to see the wizard.
Cat here, cat there, and a couple of brand new straws. That's how we keep you young and fair in the merry old land of Oz. Rub, rub here, rub there, whether you're tin or bras. That's how we keep you in good care in the merry old land of Oz.
We can make a dimple smile out of a frown. Can you even dye my eyes to match my gown? Uh-huh. Jolly old town. Sit, sit still, sit, sit down. We give the roughest climb.
That certain air of savoir-faire in the merry old land of Oz.
And now we have a day away in the merry old land of Oz.
The children finally entered the main banquet hall and were presented to Queen Ozma, who turned out to be none other than Marianne Dashwood, Runehaven's neighborhood bookworm, decked out in royal emerald-colored regalia. Marianne recognized her friends and invited them to the Queen's banquet table, where green-clad attendants served them the finest of food and drink. Cassie inquired into how Marianne came to be in the dreaming, a term that meant nothing to the bookworm. Marianne explained that she began reading Frank L. Baum's The Road to Oz once school let out for the summer. Subsequently, made a wish as she blew out the candles of her birthday cake the evening before that she could be the Queen of Oz. And suddenly and mysteriously found herself in Oz assuming the royal role. Cassie and Sabine combined what little metaphysical knowledge they each had learned from their mentors, Mr. Curtis and the witches of the Arcane Gynarchy, and concluded that Cassie had unwittingly enchanted Marianne, whose wish created the Firklis in the shape of the tornado from Frank L. Baum's Oz series, and brought them all into the near dreaming. Suddenly, Artie heard above the din of the festivities the sound of an opera aria being sung outside the palace. He then noticed that outside of each of the stained glass windows set high into the walls of the banquet hall, diminutive figures seemed to be gathering on the exterior sills, their silhouettes framed in the stained glass windows and crouching for some mischief. Artie prepared himself for an imminent invasion by party crashers and alerted his compatriots. And that's today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Please tune in next time, same fate time, same fate channel, for the next thrilling episode of the Dresden Childlings. Thanks, folks.